Hey, I'm Gary Katz, and we're standing here right outside my new shop. It's going to be a 60 by 40 dream shop, and I'm having a contractor from Medford here, Scott Wells, help me build this whole thing. Actually, Scott's the general contractor, and he's working with me to remodel my home over here and build a shop and a little guest house we're going to build a little bit later. And we're just about to finish installing the insulation that we're going to be putting underneath the slab in my shop. And you know, I may as well have Scott explain this all to you. He knows a lot more about it than I do. He's the one who's been installing it all. Scott, tell everybody what we're doing here.
All right, Gary, thanks. Basically, Gary, when you came to me several months ago with these plans, I knew right away what you were interested in was efficiency. So that's what we've tried to do here. We're trying to give you a state-of-the-art shop that has every bit of woodworking capability you could ever want in it, as well as a very high-efficiency heating system. And that is why we have all this insulation underneath the slab. The first thing we had to do was excavate out for the shop and compact about 12 inches of rock underneath both the footing walls and the slab. Then we've come back in and put in all our under slab utilities underneath the rock. And as you can see now, we've laid our 6 mil vapor barrier and brought up 4 inches of polystyrene insulation. And what that's going to do, that's going to keep the concrete warm when it's warm and cool when it's cool. We want to give Gary an optimal and efficient thermal mass. That's our goal here. I think that was better than the first time. Before we ever put down that vapor barrier, we installed all our utilities under the gravel. As you can see, we've got our dust collection system that's coming up out of the insulation right here, as well as all of our plumbing for the bathroom in the back. We sealed all the penetrations coming up through the insulation with expansive foam. If you're still using the can of foam from the big box store, the ones with the clogged straws, that you can never get rid of all the foam in the can before you have to throw it away, you're missing the boat and you're wasting your money. I use the gun from OSI. The gun has a ball valve at the end of the tip. That keeps the air from getting back inside the chamber of the gun and ruining your can of foam. I can use this gun today, set it down for a couple weeks, come right back out and use it again. And it's just as good as the first time I used it. All we do is lay the insulation in, kick it in tight. We staggered all the joints and taped every seam. The most important thing for me is to have the right subcontractor, and that's Dana. Dana can handle this kind of job, this level of a job, and he's one of the very few that can here in Southern Oregon. He's done quite a bit of radiant in his career, and I'm happy to have him here.
Thanks, Dana. I'm glad you could make it.
Thank you, Scott.
Why don't you show us a few of the little challenges or the little particular points that you look for before you want to pour, when you're prepping and before you want to pour the concrete. Because I know tomorrow morning we're going to be pouring. It's going to be really early tomorrow, and you want to make sure this thing's ready to go. Like, is this water going to bother you down here?
Unfortunately, we did have some rain, but not enough to worry about. A small area like that will dissipate once you start pouring. It'll spread out. One of the other key things we look for on this particular slab, we poured the stem wall first, so you have a better insulation by putting the insulation on the inside rather than the outside. But when you go to pour your slab, you always want to make sure that the insulation is at least 1/4 to 1/8 lower than the stem wall, so that you're not rotting off the insulation. The insulation has a tendency to roll up and down according to the temperature. So you always want to make sure that's lower than what you're rotting off of. Since we poured the stem wall, Scott has come in and put the underlayment insulation, and the plumbing went in before he did that. So before we pour and drive our screed pans, I got together with Scott and he laid out all the plumbing that's underneath the insulation so we don't accidentally drive one of our screed stakes through some of the plumbing that's underneath the insulation. We're going to have a 5-inch slab, which will allow us to have 2 inches from the top of tubing to top of slab. And these are one of the marks on the plumbing that we shoot in with the laser as well, so that when we're rodding, this is obstructing us from going all the way across, so we can float to that mark all the way around the pipe and then short rod around the pipes and then pick up our long rod board on the other side. Another thing that we look for when pouring a radiant floor heating slab is that when the plumbers loop the tubing back around, if you're close enough to a bar, it won't float up. But unfortunately, sometimes the way the pattern is that you're not that close, so we have to add another bar and another tie in order for it not to float when the concrete gets underneath it. So when pouring these slabs, you use a lot of Dolbys. You want to make sure that your tubing is exactly where you want it, not up or down in any way. And that's very important and a very critical thing when pouring these floors. Okay, another problem that we look for that's unique to radiant floor heating is that when the plumbers come in, sometimes they'll leave their zip ties too high. It's just something a plumber does because he's not a concrete guy and he doesn't think about it. So myself or one of my guys will come along and cut it so it's below grade. There's 2 of them right here. And we'll go through the whole slab and make sure there's nothing that's going to stick or protrude through the top of the slab.
So now we're here with Mike Davis from SOS Plumbing, and Mike installed all of the tubing for the hydronic system in the floor.
Mike, why don't you explain this whole system to everyone? Okay. First thing we have here is our manifolds. There's two separate manifolds with supply and return headers on them. We have 2 zones because the building is split up into two major rooms. This is our supply of our circuit number 1, and it goes out throughout the slab and it returns back through this return header right here. And then we do the same thing with this circuit. You know, it goes all the way out and serpentines around and works its way back to this return connection here. On this zone we have 4 circuits going out throughout the space, and what we try to do is make the circuits approximately the same length so we can have even heat throughout the space. We try to keep each circuit under 250 feet. If they're too long, we have too much heat loss and we can't get the heat into the slab of the building. We could go longer with larger diameter pipe. We like to use 1/2-inch pipe. It's easier to manage, to roll out and secure to the rebar and stuff, and we can space it closer together to get a more even heat throughout the slab. You know, once the building is framed up and complete, we'll connect the headers to the pump and the water heater and the controllers and to make a complete loop. We've used the unistrut channel to secure all of our sweeps and risers so that we can keep everything organized and straight coming out through the slab. We secured the tubing every 24 inches because that's the grid layout for the rebar. Code requires it every 36 inches, but we wanted to make sure the pipe didn't float, so we went every 24 inches.
Yeah?
20, 30, 40, 50, 60. That's a nice touch.
I'll wait till you guys get it. I'll get it from that end.
Don't screw up, guys.
Yeah, I think we got plenty of help.
Red light?
Yep, red tail light.
Notice how all those ties are keeping those loops right where we want them. Tight to the rebar, down in the middle of the concrete slab. That's going to give us a really efficient heating system.